Let me show you the debt as it relates to race, because we saw some numbers there, but let's look at this analysis by the Education Data Initiative. This is what they say. Okay, they say that Black and African American college students owe an average of $25,000 more than white graduates. 4 years after graduation, 48% of Black students owe 12.5% more than they borrowed. So that's the interest. That's what is not being talked about with this policy. For example, I exited with $25,000 in debt. I've paid off 16 of that principal. And that was 9 years ago. I immediately, when I got out of school, I already had $1,000 of interest. It had already been accumulating as I was in college. And then that grace period ends, and then it's just a bill, $25,000 plus another $1,000. I paid a comparable, if not almost an equal amount of interest to the principal. So I almost paid just as much. I almost paid 50% of what my principal was, plus the principal. So that means I'm paying close to what I owed coming out without even being able to really see that I've made that much of a dent. Now, I find myself luckier than most people I know. Most people I know can't even get to the principal. So, I mean, this is just absolutely criminal. And, you know, we can go on here with the numbers. It says Black and African American student borrowers are the most likely to struggle financially to student loan debt. 29% making monthly payments of $350 or more. Oh my God, $350 or more. I mean, that is a significant bill. That's a bill that most people cannot pay. 50% of 4% of all student loan debt is held by white borrowers. I hate that word Caucasian. Why even use it? Asian college graduates are fastest to repay their loan debt, most likely earn a salary that exceeds this. So it's always the Asians that are the richest, right? That's what they like to say. And they always do that without concern for nuance. But nonetheless, so here you have average student loan debt 1 year after graduation by race. Look at these huge numbers, right? So 28%, more than almost 60% owe $25,000 to $60,000. There you have it. I mean, that's incredible. That's just despicable. And then you have 17% compared to 12% here for whites. 17% owe $60,000+. And I mean, oh my God, just disgusting, just despicable. I mean, this country, this is financial plunder. This is just taking money from kids. That's all this is, right? So, you know, 45. So look at this. 45% of debt is from student loans from graduate school. Guess what's not counted in this? Graduate school. So bachelor's degree holders from Black. So here you go. $52,000 on student loan debt. I knew I saw that number somewhere. This was 2 months ago. So that's where these numbers are coming from. It's very. Anyway, I don't have to go more into the weeds on these numbers, but the purpose of me showing this is to say that this policy is just not good enough. It's not good enough. It just isn't. And it's affecting, you know, they're going to try to pander to Black people saying this is going to reduce the wealth gap between whites and Blacks, white Americans and Black Americans. And yet, when you means test in a way that disproportionately disadvantages Black workers, Black students, seems to me that that gap, or what I would call difference in exploitation, is not just going to still exist. It's going to essentially remain the same, except perhaps everyone will feel a little less burdened from debt. But here's the problem, and this is why universal policies are so important. You can have both targeted policies that get rid of, and here's what a socialist would do. Real socialists would say, we need a universal policy that cancels all student debt. And then we go after the source of the discrimination. You go after the employers. You go after their power. You take away any power they have to pay people less by race, to hire people based on race. You destroy all mechanisms for banks to discriminate based on race. That's what socialists do. That's the step we need to take. We can't just be saying, oh, well, if we play around at the edges and we give a little money here, then it's going to reduce anything. No. Racism is about a difference in exploitation and violence and oppression. It's not about, oh, well, can we play catch up? It's not some meritocratic thing. It's not just that, oh, black people started from a different place. That's true. Oh, black people started from chattel slavery and didn't have the chance to build wealth. So just give them wealth, right? And then they will succeed. No, that's not it. You have to go to the source of power. And I hate when people say, I don't know who's calling this elitist, but what is very important to note is that the only way you can eliminate racism, I saw Jimmy Dore talking about this with Minnesota teachers, and I would put even more nuance to it, right? Because in their union contract, they're having some kind of like fire white teachers first policy without addressing the austerity to this, that most public school districts are being forced to commit austerity against teachers and fire them. So it probably is going to be counterproductive to say, well, white teachers need to be fired first. It's not addressing the real problem. We have to address the real problem. Racism is a problem of power, of people, capitalists, and their hirelings in the state, enforcing a difference of exploitation so everyone suffers, and at different degrees, so that the ruling class can get off scot-free. And what needs to happen is we need to, instead of talking about, oh, racial wealth gap here and student loans forgiveness there, one's universal, one is targeted. No, it needs to be both. You need to cancel all student loan debt, give everyone Medicare for all of the universal policies you can think of, and then also say who and what are the sources of power that are enforcing racism and white supremacy. Go after them. And now here's the kicker, everyone. This is the big conclusion. How do you get there? Well, you can't have those forces that you got to go after in power. You can't have capital. You can't have big capital. You can't have monopoly capital, finance capital. You can't have the police state as it exists. You can't have those things as they exist trying to give you these things, because they're not going to do it. And this is the kicker, is that in order to get universal policies and targeted policies and put them together, you need to have the power to do that. That's why we need real socialism. Not incrementalism or austerity or austerity. It's either a choice between austerity or here's a little bit of crumbs plus austerity, right? That's what you get between the GOP and the Democrats. Only austerity with the GOP, only privatization. With the Democrats, it's the same privatization, austerity, and then we'll give you a few crumbs when we're absolutely desperate, and then we'll probably push austerity more, because I don't know if you've heard Biden talk about it, but he says, oh, well, we'll pay for this through deficit reduction. What does deficit reduction mean? It means that, oh, yeah, the government's spending too much. We're going to have to get rid of that. Where does that usually fall? Does it fall in the military and the police or anything like that? No. It's going to fall on us. So, what the ruling class giveth, they taketh away. And so just remember, in this moment of crisis, of neoliberal crisis, that this is a moment for us to really learn a lesson that the ruling class is worried. They're worried about the stability of this system. And if we are going to get anything that we actually want, we're going to have to fight like hell to get it. And we're going to have to be much more nuanced and sophisticated in our ability to talk about things like class and race. Because I see too many on here, oh my God, talking about racism and white supremacy and power. It's all divisive. It doesn't have to be. Why does it have to be? It doesn't have to be. The most successful movements that this country has ever seen did both. The Black radical tradition has done both in very significant sections and periods of this country's so-called history, this country's so-called history. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Race and class are not disconnected. You can't address one without the other. Like, you just can't. And when you try, it's liberalism. It's just pure, straight up liberalism.